Hey everyone, Brandy here. In this video, you'll hear from creators and curators of some of the special exhibits at the International Quilt Festival, Houston 2023. We start off with Lea McComas talking about her quilt, Woman's Work. But be sure to watch right to the end, where Shawn Sickle tells the heartwarming story of her quilt called We Are All in This Together for the Monarch Cherrywood Challenge.
I'm Lea McComas. I'm here with my quilt, Women's Work. And it's part of a big exhibit of quilts that were commissioned to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. And the exhibit was hosted by the Clinton Presidential Foundation. They brought together a lot of historical artifacts, and then they invited quilt artists to do original works to supplement. So we don't have the historical artifacts, but all the quilts are here at Houston. This is probably the last time they'll all be together. So my quilt was called Women's Work, and we were each asked to select an event or a person to kind of commemorate, and I couldn't decide. And the more I researched, the worse it got. So then I was inspired by the painting by Raphael called School of Athens. And this is a painting in the Vatican. And so Raphael did a painting that included all the great minds of his time, and he grouped them by discipline, like the mathematicians are grouped over here and the philosophers are walking and talking, but they were all men. So my inspiration was him. So I created the big building, and then I started filling it with great women. And so they are grouped by kind of topic or their focus, but they cross time zones or eras. So like these are my journalists. This is Ida B. Wells, who brought lynching in the South to the attention of the world. And then this is Gloria Steinem, who was part of the Now movement in the 60s. These are my education girls. This is Ruby Bridges walking hand in hand with Malala. And then there are social reformers. There are women who fight sexual harassment in the workplace. These are some international figures fighting for equality. My STEM ladies are back there. These are my Supreme Court justices breaking the glass ceiling with a gavel. These are legislators, and many of them are holding legislation that they helped pass. And then Raphael put himself in his painting. So this is me in the corner sharing the stories with my stepdaughter, Maya. So initially I had 1 year to do this quilt, and it only had 32 figures in it. And then just as I was getting ready to ship it off, I got word because of the pandemic, everything was delayed a year. So I added 18 more. And then when I was getting ready to ship it, they said, oh, delayed another year. So I moved people around, because every time you move them, you have to make them a new size. And I added more. So in the end, there's 57 figures. When I shared it with people, nobody knew who everyone was, and I had trouble remembering, so I wrote a book. And it has all the stories, some stories about making the quilt, the challenges, but also number 40 is Margaret Sanger, and it has her bio and why I put her on the quilt. So there is a key here. These are some pages from the book. So there's a number key, so you can look people up and then find out who their name is and what group they're in. All right, so yeah, so any questions about this? About how I did it? This is all raw edge applique. It's fabric and thread. Except when I added these people in the very back, I had trouble with their details in the face, so those are done with a fine tip Sharpie. So, and then sometimes I was working from photos, open source photos on the web. So a lot of things came from the Library of Congress, and there's a Wikipedia site that has open source photos. And then if I couldn't find people in the right position, I would try and, I called it Frankensteining. I'd get a couple pictures of them. For example, Hillary's, this is her when she was giving her speech in Beijing. And then I just had to find a picture of her walking and add the bottom to the top, and I had to resize it. This is Kamala Harris. So for her, this is me wearing a blue blazer, sitting at a table, and then I put her head on top of it. Yeah, these are my hands for Lucy Burns. These are my hands, Elizabeth Cady Stanton holding a water bill. But this is interesting. This says Hester Vaughan. So I couldn't find a picture of Hester Vaughan, but she was a young girl who came from England. She was a domestic worker in New York City, I believe, and she was raped by the man of the house. And when she got pregnant, she was cast out on the streets because obviously she was a sinful woman. And then it was winter, she couldn't afford heating fuel, the baby died. When she was discovered in her apartment, Hester was arrested and convicted of infanticide and put in jail. And Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who was famous for working with Susan B. Anthony on the 19th Amendment, was still working for women's rights after that, and she got her ladies together and they began a media campaign in the newspapers talking to legislators and politicians about the plight of these young women. And in the end, they got Hester acquitted and she was allowed to return to England. So, you know, that was what was happening 100 years ago. And then she's grouped with Anita Hill and Tarana Burke, who founded the Me Too movement, which, by the way, I got a picture of her wearing this dress and her hand, and this is my arm in a black sweater. So.
Can you tell us where we can find you online and social media?
Yes. So Lea McComas, and it's L-E-A, pronounced Lee, like a cup of tea. LeaMcComas.com, and you can also pick up a copy of the book. But if you're here, they're at the table right behind you, and because books are heavy, we will mail this home for you. So any of the books that you buy, we'll ship them for you. But you can get this on my website. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Luana Rubin, and this is my quilt, Women's Rights Are Human Rights. This was made for the Women's Voices exhibit, which was at the Clinton Presidential Center from September through April of this last year. And all of the artists were very honored to go to an artist reception in December. And we got to meet Hillary and Chelsea, which was very cool, but we also were able to attend a seminar on women's rights, which is something that's very important to me. Those of you who follow me may know that environmental issues and human rights and environmental justice are really all in my stable of issues that I love to talk about. And I've made a commitment that all of the art quilts that I make from now on are going to be activist artwork. So this piece is really special. I chose this, well, I felt very lucky that I was allowed to do this piece because this was part of the theme of the show. When Secretary Clinton went to China to speak at the United Nations Women's Conference in 1995, she gave this very famous speech where she said, women's rights are human rights, and human rights are women's rights, once and for all. And do you remember, those of you who are old enough, that was like an epiphany at the time? You know, it's like, wow, women's rights are human rights? What a concept. And sadly, we're still fighting that today. We're still fighting for those rights. We've made some progress, but we all need to work together and speak up to make sure that for our daughter's sake, we continue to move forward. I was also interested in this piece because she made the speech in China. So this was the Women's Conference for the United Nations in Beijing, 1995. And you'll see here in pink free motion stitching, women's rights are human rights. And so this was the original phrase in English, but I went on to put it in 14, 15 different languages. So you see up here in Japanese, in Chinese, and hopefully with our international visitors here at the show, many of our visitors will be able to recognize in their language this phrase, women's rights are human rights. And I've made this in the style of Peter Max because I've always been inspired by the Peter Max abstraction. And I wanted to show, with all of the colors in the audience, the variety of people who were in the audience. It was women from all over the world, but also there were men in the audience as well. And this is kind of a collage of different views of the event, but if you look at the photos or the video of this event when she gave the lecture or the speech, you'll see the banner up here. So this was all embroidered with the United Nations logo. and all of the information. This was actually at the event. This potted plant was also there, and she was wearing that pink suit. And the cool thing is at the exhibit at the Clinton Presidential Center, the actual iconic pink suit was in a glass case next to my quilt. So that was something that I was very excited about. So this whole exhibit has an incredible collection of very well-known artists. We were all invited to participate in this. Many of my friends and people who I've admired over the years have pieces here, and I'm right next to Michael Cummings' piece about Shirley Chisholm for president. So I'm in good company here. And of course we have 3 pieces by Hollis Chatelaine. We have a piece right over here by Lucky Shea and Lea McComas' monumental quilt. And I have to say that, you know, Lea was teaching at Boulder High School, where my daughter was going to school at the time that she was making this. And I actually went up to her studio and watched her work on this thing. And it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger with more and more female figures, and she just blows me away. So this whole exhibit has been such an inspiration for me, and I'm really so deeply honored that I was invited to participate. I'll also mention that eQuilter, my company, is a sponsor of this exhibit. And if you're interested in seeing more of my work, you can of course subscribe to the eQuilter newsletter. You can also find my photos on Flickr.com and search for my name, Luana Rubin, Luana-Rubin. And you can also find me on YouTube, but generally all of those links are in the eQuilter newsletter. Thank you very much for your time.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Denise Burkitt, and I'm from Queensland, Australia, and I'm a textile artist who designs my own fabrics. Some of my fabrics are reproduced for Free Spirit Fabrics, and I put out one collection a year. So my new collection, which was launched last week, is called Exotic Garden Palace, and that's based on India, travels to India. So there are 26 quilts in this whole exhibition, solo exhibition, and there are 3 themes. The first theme is called Island Vacation, and the second theme is Life on the Road to Outback Australia, and the third theme is Exotic Garden Palace, which is based on my new collection. So this is the brochure for the new collection, and that will be in stores in July 2024. So all these quilts that are here, I have actually painted starting from white cloth, and some of them are well over a yard or a metre wide, and I paint using water-based watercolours and fabric paints, and I never plan what I'm going to do. I just paint, usually from something I've seen in the garden, or if I'm travelling in my motorhome, it might be a shape or seed pods or something else that just sparks an idea in my mind to start painting, and from there one idea leads to another. So this one here, the inspiration was from a holiday in Vanuatu, which is in the South Pacific. And I love all the little sea shapes that you get in the shallows of the water. So you get little anemones and kelp, different types of seaweed. And in Vanuatu, it's not unusual to find whole shells without any breakages in them. So this little design here, I'd actually done it about 20 years ago. It's a little screen print. And so I managed to incorporate that on there. Other inspiration has been where I live. I live on 10 acres on the hillside in Queensland, Australia, and I grow bananas where I am. So I cut down a banana hand, and when I cut down the stalk that the bananas were growing on, this pattern revealed itself on the sliced banana stalk. So I went back to the house and cut several more slices and started printing with it. And so from there I sent a photograph of my pattern to Free Spirit, and they then said yes, we'd like it. So I sent the artwork to them, which in this case, this was the artwork. And then later on they sent it back to me and I've had it quilted, free motion quilted. Coming over here, this design here is also from the collection Island Vacation, which is available now. And this is inspired by travels to Espirito Santo in Vanuatu, and I love the colours in it. Over there it's very tropical and there's rainstorms every day, and people still live in thatched grass houses, although they have mobile phones attached to their solar panels outside. And the markets every day are bustling with different villages bringing in their produce, which might be sweet potato and melons of every description, and strawberries and mangoes, papaya as well. So these colours you can see are all those colours that I was inspired by, very tropical. And over here, this is called Kashmir Romance, and inspired by travels to India. And I noted when I was in India, a lot of the flower shapes are quite pointy, and so that's what I've tried to replicate, some new shapes that I haven't done before. So again, this is all painting with water-based paints, which are permaset paints, and I spray water a lot as well, and I use a medium called print paste, which I mix with the paint, and that helps to spread it. There's one more around the corner here that I'd like to show you, because when I travel in my motorhome, I'm often sitting around a campfire at night, and it's just a little one, but it means quite a bit to me because I am often around a campfire. So often I cook my dinner on a campfire and then I boil up fabric around the fire. And at the end of a fire in the morning, you're left with all these bottle tops and little bits and pieces. And often I use charcoal as well. So I have used charcoal on this one, and you'd think that it wouldn't stay on the fabric, but it seems to once I put other paint around it. So it's only a small quilt, but it's a favourite of mine. And the last one that I'll talk about today is this one, which are techniques that I teach in my workshops, which are learn to paint on fabric workshops, and they're 1 and 2 day workshops. So I've used a combination of found household items on this one. In fact, this little section here and this section here I've actually stamped using tea bags. So that's called Wedding Gaiety, because it reminds me of a celebration.
Okay, so if people are watching right now and they're wondering, where can we find you online?
Okay, Denise Burkitt Designs.com, and you can find me on Instagram and Facebook as Denise Burkitt.
Okay, and Burkitt is B-U-R-K-I-T-T.
That's right.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us
Thank
today.
you for having me.
Can you tell us your name and tell us a little bit about your show today?
Okay. Well, my name is O.V. Brantley, and that's a whole question in itself, because everybody wants to know what O.V. stands for. And I have to tell them it doesn't stand for anything. It's a nickname. My given name is Overtis. I'm my father's firstborn. His name was Otis, and they named me after my father. They made up Overtis. And so I went to college. People said, we can't remember that, so we're just going to call you OV. And they did. And then I went to law school, and because it was so long ago, not that many female lawyers, I decided to do it as initials so people would not know whether I was O period or V period. But the reason I do red and white quilts is because I'm a member of a sorority called Delta Sigma Theta, and the colors of the sorority, I got my sisters here with me, the colors are red and white. And so once you're in a sorority, it's like a sports team, then you gotta like the colors, right? And our symbol is the elephant. And so in my exhibit, you'll see elephants in lots of red and white. And that's why, when I became a quilter, I said, well, I got to make a red and white quilt. And then I made another one, and another one, and another one. And it's 20 years later, and now I have a whole exhibit of red and white quilts. So that's how the exhibit came together. But I hope that it shows the quilters lots of different techniques that they can incorporate in their own quilting. And I always embed little messages in my quilts about how to live a good life, how to be socially active, try to make the world a better place. And so if you read the stories behind the quilts, like that one, the disappearing 9-patch, you will see that's all about voting. My little white elephant over there is all about racism. My purses are all about being economically secure, because we need that. And my other, what I think of as a masterpiece on the other side of this one, Follow Me to Freedom, is a tribute to my heritage as a descendant of enslaved people. And so all the quilts kind of have a little bit of a message.
And can you tell us about some of the names on the quilts?
Okay, so I have gotten that question a lot. The names on the quilts represent, there are 20 of them. On the stars, they represent 20 of my closest quilting friends. Because when I decided to do a solo exhibit, I was thinking, I've spent so much wonderful time with my quilting friends, because that's why we do it. And I said, I need a way to incorporate my friends into the show. So I made 20 quilts and embroidered the names on the stars. The angels, the small angels, are my family members, and there are 7 of them, starting with Clara, my grandmother, who was a quilter, and I own 8 of her quilts, and my mother, Evora, who was not a quilter, and my 2 sisters, and my 2 nieces, and my lovely daughter over here, India, has an angel, but sometimes she's the devil. So those are the names. That's why the names are in the quilts. Just I incorporated people I love. Yes? Okay. So the question from the new quilter is, what advice would I give to a new quilter? And the most important advice is to just enjoy the journey. The quilt is finished whenever it's finished. Do not stress yourself out by giving yourself fake deadlines. But what works for me is to always have a difficult quilt in the works, because I like to create what I consider a personal masterpiece, so I can come to the quilt festival and show off. And I like to do simple quilts. And so, for instance, the red and white star over there is a simple quilt, but it's beautiful, I think, anyway. And so, you know, you can do that in a short period of time. On the other hand, this monstrosity, a star among stars, took me almost 3 years. And it's all hand-pieced. Every little star point, every hexagon, and every diamond, it's hand-pieced with needle and thread, and you build one little circle and one little circle and more circles and circles, and then you put them all together, and it takes a long time. There is no way to do it fast, and even before you start piecing, just choosing the fabrics, you have to choose fabrics that will kind of tell a story. Fussy cut, like you see some cats in here, and some other things. Well, you got to find some fabric with some cats in them, and then you cut them. So I would say do hard stuff and simple stuff, and it'll keep you going.
Okay, and if people are watching this on YouTube on Sunday, can they find you online or on social media anywhere?
I am definitely online. My website is ovspeaksquilts.com. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and now on Threads. So you can find me, but take one of my little red cards so you won't forget the website.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
My name is Carrie Dell. I'm the Executive Director for American Quilt Study Group, and this is our exhibit here at Houston. We selected quilts from different collectors, member collectors, and so they're all a little bit different. For example, this one is a signature quilt. There's a lot of little signatures if you look in, and Lisa Erlinson, that's her specialty. She collects signature quilts. The American Quilt Study Group is a membership organization, and we study quilts across time. So it's we study quilts from yesterday, quilts from 100 years ago, quilts from the 70s, all throughout time. And we're really focused on helping anybody become a quilt study person, so they can research quilts, and you don't have to have a PhD to do this. You can join, and we give all the tools and all the resources to allow people to learn how to study quilts. So
Yeah, that is great. And so if people are interested in getting involved in your organization, where can they go?
well, they can go to our website, AmericanQuiltStudyGroup.org, and you can join on that site. We have all kinds of information about our organization on the site, people, the volunteers, the members, and it's just a really great group of people. And one of the most important things about AQSG is that we just really stress the importance of documenting and recognizing the quilt makers who were telling their stories long ago. Not just long ago, there are quilts that are unidentified from last week that you can study, but it's important for us to recognize that, and really the cultures. There's so many different cultures within the quilting world, and it's really fun to figure out all of these different facets of quilt making, but quilt study mostly. So come visit us at AmericanQuiltStudyGroup.org.
I'm Nancy Bavor. I'm president of the American Quilt Study Group. We're a group that promotes research of all quilt-related activities, all periods, all genres. And I want to talk about a couple of quilts here today. You sort of ask, why are they side by side? Because they're pretty different. So the one on my left here, this vivid red one, is actually made of polyester, double polyester knit fabric. It's pretty indestructible, and the maker just used 4 colors, the red, the grays, and the black. Pretty simplified. Her piecing is very precise, impeccable. It weighs a lot because it is that double knit polyester, but it really has a bold, graphic, very contemporary feel. And we're pairing it with this quilt by an African-American maker. Lots of different fabrics. In fact, one of the blocks has over 25 pieces in it, just one block. So the time periods are not that far apart. This quilt was made in the 50s by Eliza Agnes, an African-American maker from Alabama. And the other quilt is actually anonymous. It was circa 1980, and it was collected by a woman named Kathy Glover, who loves to collect double polyester knit quilts. So this is one of the oldest quilts in the exhibition. It was made in 1846 by Esther White. Now, how do we know that? Because Esther signed her name at the very top of the quilt. It says made by Esther White. But there are also a lot of other names whose last name are White on the quilt, and we think it was probably made by Esther, the blocks appliqued by Esther, and then she had family members sign their names in each of the blocks. When this was made in the 1840s, there were a lot of these name inscribed or signature quilts made for young women who got married and moved west with their husbands. Now, west meaning they moved from Pennsylvania to western Pennsylvania or Ohio and Indiana. And although this was initially thought to be from the East Coast, it actually was an Ohio quilt. So we think that Esther probably brought it with her when she moved from Pennsylvania to Ohio. And obviously she treasured it because it is in very good condition, and a lot of these quilts with these signatures on them were treasured by their family as mementos of family members they left behind. So we call this the Equal Rights Amendment quilt. It was made in the 70s by a group of women in Northern California in the Sacramento area. The owner thought, well, it would be easy to research these names. You just check on Facebook. Well, she finally figured out after about a year of doing research that they were probably in their 40s or 50s when they made this quilt as part of a consciousness raising group perhaps, or just a celebration of women firsts. And was only able to find the obituary of one of them. None of them were on Facebook. But each block is different, and it highlights a different women's first. The one in the upper left there is women were thought to be the weaker sex and couldn't possibly summit at Mount Everest, but they found out with this group, A Women's Place is on Top, that women could in fact summit at Mount Everest. Another one of my favorite is Ms. Magazine, another women's first, different women's marches. One down here is Title IX. on the lower level again. And for those of us who came of age in the 60s or 70s, for girls and women, sports were ballet or swim team. And I think for today's women to realize how far we have come in some ways and how far we haven't come in some ways is a good thing to think about. And this quilt reminds us of all that was going on in the 70s.
My name is Kimiko Frydl. I'm having an exhibition at International Quilt Festival 2023. This is my exhibit, Honey, I Shrunk the Quilt.
Okay. Would you like to talk about a couple of your quilts? Let's talk about this one first.
Yeah, this is called I'm Still Saying, because I made this about 20 sometimes years ago. When I make miniatures, everybody said, "Oh my gosh, this person must be insane." So this is my answer to everybody. I'm still saying.
Because they're so tiny. And
Yeah.
how are your fingers?
Well, fingers are regular fingers, same as other people.
Okay, do you want to tell us a little bit about this quilt?
Okay, this in this show, probably this is the latest one.
Okay.
And technique, the other one was foundation piece, but this is called whole cloth.
Full cloth quilt.
Yeah, so one piece of fabric and with all the quilting.
Incredible. And how did you get the color on that quilt?
Colors, it's called shadowed trapanto.
Oh, it's all trapunto and
Yeah,
thread, right?
yeah.
Wow, beautiful.
So this is mainly threads work.
Okay, is there one more you want to talk about?
This is called Mission Impeccable. This is a series of mission series
Okay.
I
Oops,
made. And I started with a 64 point mariner's compass. Then it wasn't so difficult for me, so maybe I can do one grade up. So this is 128 points.
128 points of Mariner's Compass.
Yes.
Wow. Wow, that is incredible.
And I need some flowers, so I put hand embroidery and hand silk embroidery.
So these ladies are talking about there's a secret butterfly.
Secret butterfly. I'll show you. Here it is. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Very, very nice.
Lovely. Okay, so if someone is interested in finding out more about you or your work, do you have a website?
Instagram
Okay.
is Mimi, MIMI 30903.
Hello, I'm Roderick Kiracofe. I'm here in Houston, Texas at the Houston Quilt Festival in an exhibition that American Quilt Study Group organized for the festival. Sponsored by Quilt Folk. I love Quilt Folk, I want to get that in. And I was asked if I would loan some quilts for this exhibition. So I picked 3. They did say, do I have any African American made quilts? And I said, I do. 2 that I have names for. This one is an anonymous maker, we don't know. It was found in San Francisco at a African American estate sale. I did not find it. A good friend of mine who does the estate sales said, I just brought home a quilt. I think you might be interested. And of course, I was very interested in it. So we're going to start with the back. It is feed sack that's been hand dyed. There is this label that's still on it, and it's upside down. And some of the feed sack label that's still left. And it does have a Texas, it's from Texas. Whether the maker was from Texas, we don't know. But I've always loved log cabin quilts. This is a very quirky log cabin. It's not perfect, and that's what I love about it. It has wonderful printed fabrics in it. But one of the things in my collecting was red. The color red was often the deciding factor for me as I looked over it. And this just has so much beautiful red in it that just really makes it dramatic, in my opinion. This quilt and most every quilt that I bought, they were used. They were used on beds. People slept under them. So that wonderful double-sided or double-edged thing about quilts, they can be shown on a wall as art, but also they were used. Let's go take a look at a couple of more that I brought. So when I began putting the collection together, just looking for quilts from the last half of the 20th century, that was kind of a starting point. I never intended to, I broke my own rules. If I found a good quilt that appealed to me visually, and it was earlier than 1950, I was in there. I wanted it. Unconventional and unexpected starts the date at 1950. Unconventional, unexpected quilts were made before 1950, and it was never the intention to just imply that they started then. So I love finding good examples that are earlier. This quilt has fabric in it from 1910, 1920. I date it from 1930 to 1950 because women made quilts over a long period of time. They weren't sitting down and making them in one setting. This came to me with the name of the maker as Eliza Agnes, and that she was born in Virginia, and that she was a midwife. Well, doing research on Ancestry.com and Family Search, I was able to find census records that had her both as Eliza Agnew and Eliza Agnes. But that happens a lot in the census. One census can have the one name, and 10 years later they can be a different name. So, but on it, it showed she was born in Virginia and that she was a midwife. That was her occupation. And at that time, she had 2 granddaughters living with her. This is a repeated pattern. Barbara Brackman calls it the wishing ring. What Eliza called it, we don't know, but I like it for the fact that it is this repeat block pattern, but she's not making the same block for each one. She's using up scraps, she's using up fabrics in various ways. Here, she's used all of the same fabric, and the center piece is all the same, is one fabric. Over here, where I've put a little safety pin to remind me where it is, that block contains 25 different fabrics that are pieced together to make it. So she's really using up her scraps. But then just the overall, how each block is different and different shades. It's been washed, it's been used. I think some of the fabric that's kind of faded, that was original to when she made it. I don't think it just faded randomly. So she was using up fabric that was used, possibly work clothes. This also has a broken grid, which I loved in the quilts that I found in this collection, where those grids are not horizontal, perfectly horizontal and vertical. And she has pieced all of these grids. So she definitely was using up fabric. What made me really want this quilt and made my heart sing even more than for when I first saw it was this one strip of kind of this orangey red that's just really stands out on this quilt. And of course, then wondering, why did she do that? I'm so glad that she did. Let's go take a look at one more. This quilt came to me out of Alabama from a dealer that I'd been buying a lot of quilts from. It did come with a name, Odie Wright Dover. I was able to find her that name. Did discover that Wright was her maiden name. It came to me as Odie Dover. Finding women in census records is more difficult, more challenging, because you don't know if it's a maiden name or a married name. So I have been able to find Odie Wright and her family, and then marriage records. I think it was Henry Dover was the husband. She is African American. And again, it's the quirkiness of it. What I love is this lower right corner. This quilt does not hang straight. The piece is not square. That's one of the charms for me. And again, just this wonderful scrappy quilt using all kinds of fabric. This is kind of a velvet, like velour, got corduroy in it, this upholstery, some kind of a furnishing fabric. This could have been upholstery. This square within a square, it's Joseph Albert. She created, this was all piece. This was not one piece of fabric that she put in here. And again, the mystery of where did this hunt scene fabric, again, it could have been curtains. So just the wonderful variety, the simple 9 patches that are in it. It also has enough red in it, again, that just really gives it that pop. I love this red and white striped fabric in it. A wonderful nether quilt that I've been excited to be able to discover, bring to people in the book Unconventional and Unexpected. So thank you for asking me.
I want to say thank you for sharing your quilts with the Quilt Study Group so that they're on display for us all to see.
You're welcome.
Hi everyone, my name is Ann Houle and I am here at the Houston International Quilt Festival 2023 with my show special exhibit on my athlete series. I'm a quilter from California, live in Monterey, and I started making these athlete quilts about 10 years ago. And what I was trying to portray was how to do a static image like a pictorial quilt of something that is full of movement and emotion. As you can see, I'm picking images of a certain sport, highlighting on the athlete, and I'm always trying to find the moment of drama, the moment of change, the moment of excitement where your emotions can get involved, and letting the shape of the body express what the moment in the sport is about. So the technique, it's a raw edge applique. It's not anything really special that I'm doing, but I do have netting in over all of them so that when the pieces are all attached to the quilt, there's no possibility that they're going to come unglued or come up. And one of the things that the netting does also is my initial impulse was in watching sports on television, you're looking through a screen. So it also has the effect of you're looking through something, but you're still grabbed by the emotion and the movement. I use the netting also as shading, so the shading of the pool or the wherever he's skating is netting rather than another color of the fabric. So multiple uses. And I'm interested in any sport. It doesn't matter what sport. I happen to be a hockey fan and a baseball fan, so I have several hockey ones. But I'm interested in sports that aren't necessarily the top sports of, I actually don't have a football one. And I don't watch football, so it's hard for me to get that moment of drama. So that's what I'm going for, and that's my exhibit. 21 quilts. I keep making them. They're a bit like Lay's potato chips. You can't just do one.
So how did it feel when you found out that you were going to be having a display at the National Quilt Festival?
This has been such a thrill. And and I don't see these up all together. You know, I make them and then I see a couple up, I'll put them up in my house, but to see all 21 up is a thrill. The amount of space that they've devoted to this is just so exciting to me. And it's been so much fun talking to people about them. The other day they were elementary school kids, and the boys got it that you could do a quilt about anything. And so that was just so much fun to talk about and share people's stories of their kids being athletes, and it's just a great subject.
Okay, and if you're watching right now and you're interested in seeing this entire exhibit by Houle, check out the Quilter on Fire TikTok, YouTube, or Instagram, or Facebook. I have reels up, and this whole video is going to be up on Monday. And also, Anne, if people are watching right now and they want to connect with you or see more of your work, where can they go online?
I have a website, AnneHouleQuilts, all one word, .com.
Well, congratulations on such a wonderful special exhibit, and thank you so much for sharing some bits of your story.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Okay, we are in front of Orange Crushed It with Andrea Brokenshire. So Andrea, can you tell us a little bit about your special exhibit at IQF this week?
Yeah, okay. Well, this is an exhibit of 18 of my painted floral art quilts based on my photography that are all hand-painted imagery of flowers. And I enjoy large format flowers, and so that is kind of what I do. It's my shtick.
And they're so brilliant and perfect that some people think they're actually photographs. So can you tell us a little bit about your process?
Okay, well, first of all, I have an aesthetic for realism. I'm actually a biologist by education. I have a degree in zoology and a background as well as botany. So my aesthetic is realism. So if it looks like you can grab it and you want to touch it, then I feel like it's a win-win. Win-win. So I'm always constantly trying to improve, because I think life is a journey about knowledge, and so I'm not afraid of messing up, because I figure that I learned something from everything that I do. But this quilt here, Orange Crushed It, is a little bit of an homage to my mom. She is the master gardener. I am not. I can't keep a plant alive to save my life. But by having my flowers here, they always are in perfect condition, and they never wilt and they never die. So I feel like that's a very wonderful situation. So this is my mom's begonia. Every year she has begonia pots, and one year she had this particular begonia. And what I was interested in this begonia specifically was the leaves. They have this prickly texture to them and kind of crinkly, and I really want to try to emulate that. And you cannot stitch every single hair and everything on a leaf, otherwise it would look a mess. So how do you create the imagery that gives the illusion of all of that without putting it actually there? So some of it is there, but most of it is not. And I like the fact that the leaf goes over the begonia. Another thing that I look at when I'm trying to decide on a quilt or what I want to work is I look at the interplay between light and shadow. I love when the light is coming in certain angles and the color fluoresces through, or you see the back of something and it shines through. So with this quilt, there was a lot of sun that was coming, so you get a lot of lights and darks and playing within the shadow lines between each of the petals.
Can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to do an entire show?
Well, this is a body of work. These quilts here start in 2010 up to present day. So it's kind of like a journey of my art quilting days, but they're not laid out in chronological order. So then that's fine too, because I think the way they laid it out is absolutely stunning. But I've always loved flowers, but I couldn't grow them, so I had to make them. So, inspiration for me is two major artists in my life that I love is George O'Keeffe with the large format flowers, and Monet. I love Impressionism art and being able to take little bits of color to create imagery. And when I was thinking about doing these quilts, I was thinking how the bits of color within confetti really emulate the backgrounds of a diffuse background when you take a photograph where everything's kind of blurry and kind of in the background and the imagery just stands out in front. So I thought that was a really great use of this style against the flower imagery itself.
Now, I bumped into one of your closest friends a little earlier today who is here to enjoy the show with you. Can you tell us how friends have encouraged you along your journey?
Oh my gosh, they encourage you more than your spouses do. They love you no matter what. You know, and you're talking about we've been friends for forever. We are total opposites, but we totally support each other. She's my chosen sister in life.
So how did it feel when you discovered that, yes, you were going to be in International Quilt Festival with your show of quilts?
Surreal. It's one of those bucket list moments as a quilter and as an artist to have your body of work being seen by people who understand and appreciate what was going on. So when I saw it all hanging up for the first time Wednesday night, it almost brought me to tears. It's one of those moments you never think is ever going to happen, and then when it happens, it almost feels unreal.
Can you tell us a little bit about where people can connect with you on social media?
Oh, sure. I am located on Facebook. You can find me on my business page, AMB, those are my initials, AMB Fiber Art and Design, and you just follow that. I tend to show process, so when I'm starting a new piece, I take pictures along the way so everybody can follow along as I either paint a quilt or quilt the quilt. Kind of gives people a sense that they're part of the process. And because this is so pretty, everybody always, you see the quilting on the front, but you really don't see the quilting till you turn it to the back.
Thank you so much for sharing part of your story.
Thank you so much. I'm just so thrilled to be here.
Hi, I'm Shawn Sickle, and I participated in the Cherrywood Fabric Challenge for this year. It's about the monarch butterflies and that they're on the endangered species list. I saw the kit for the fabric at QuiltCon, and I was just drawn to it immediately. Butterflies have a really special meaning for me. My mother absolutely loved butterflies, and she's the one who introduced me into quilting, and she passed in 2017. So this was just very powerful for me to be able to honor her. She handheld me through my quilting journey. I actually had a tattoo that's a tribute to my mother, that she cut all my fabric for me. So there's scissors, and my very first solo piece was a paper piece butterfly that I did for her. So, and her favorite color was green. My daughter drew this for me, and it just has intense meaning for me. So when I saw the challenge, I was just drawn to it. And the fact that monarchs are becoming more and more rare, and they are on the endangered species list. So when it came to making my quilt, my inspiration came from the fact that they are dissipating. And so I picked the vortex because the butterflies are coming apart. My quilting pattern is that we're all connected. So we're all in this together. And every little thing that each one of us does impacts the whole world. So I was very excited to be called that I was one of the finalists. And I'm just super excited to be here in Houston and to be able to let people see my quilt.
Well, congratulations for having your quilt in this show.
Thank you so much.
Now leave a comment. What did you think of these special exhibits? And be sure to like and subscribe the Quilter on Fire YouTube channel for more from Houston.